This symbolic act wasn't just about title or honor. It was a declaration, a clear message from Pope Leo XIV to the Church. The future must be built on bridges, not walls. It must center around mercy, unity, and authentic discipleship, not rigid power structures. The Pope is reimagining how leadership should look in the Catholic Church, and Tegel is a prime figure in that vision. Now, let's explore the immediate reactions within the Vatican and Catholic communities worldwide. Within hours of the announcement, bishops and cardinals across Europe and Latin America expressed shock, not in opposition but in admiration. A cardinal close to the Pope remarked anonymously to a Vatican journalist, "No one saw this coming, but somehow it makes complete sense. If the Church is to become what the Second Vatican Council envisioned, this is the path." Even some of the more traditionalist bishops, who have often been skeptical of Pope Leo XIV's reformist bent, found themselves quietly acknowledging Cardinal Tegel's unique ability to connect with people across cultures. There's a general understanding, even among critics, that Tegel's humility and vision might be exactly what the Church needs in these fragile times. But while Rome was stunned, the Philippines erupted in joy. Tegel is not just a cardinal there. He's a national spiritual figure. The Filipino faithful saw this elevation as a divine affirmation of their country's deep Catholic roots and contribution to the global Church. Churches rang bells. Dioceses released official statements of gratitude. And many Filipino Catholics wept openly during masses of thanksgiving. It wasn't just about national pride, it was about hope. For many in the global South, Tegel's elevation is a sign that their voices matter more than ever. Pope Leo XIV, in this single gesture, told the world that the time of centralized European domination in church politics might be coming to an end. The peripheries now have a seat at the main table. Of course, this raises a critical question many are asking. What exactly does this mean for the Church's future direction? Well, in many ways, this decision signals the Pope's next move. By elevating Cardinal Tegel, a known advocate for Vatican II values, Pope Leo XIV is sending a loud message that reforms will not slow down. In fact, they might accelerate. Some insiders say this move could pave the way for a sweeping restructuring of the Roman Curia. We might soon see more leaders from Asia, Africa, and Latin America appointed to top Vatican positions. We might also see a renewed focus on synodality, a church where decisions are made through listening and dialogue rather than just top-down orders. But there's also another layer to this move that's drawing global attention: succession. Whether intentional or not, Pope Leo XIV has placed Cardinal Tegel squarely in the spotlight as a potential successor. At 68 years old, Tegel is still young by papal standards, with enough energy to lead the Church through decades of transformation. His deep spirituality, gentle leadership style, and ability to connect with youth and lay people make him a compelling figure for a post-Francis era. And this is where the conversation gets even more intense. Some insiders believe this is Pope Leo's way of shaping the next conclave. By putting someone like Tegel at the forefront, he's guiding the College of Cardinals toward a more inclusive, global, and compassionate model of leadership. Not everyone agrees, of course. Some traditionalists are worried that this shift is too rapid, too political even. They argue that the Church is at risk of losing its doctrinal foundation in the name of popularity and modernization. But Pope Leo XIV seems unbothered by such criticisms. To him, the Church must adapt or risk irrelevance. And in Cardinal Tegel, he sees not just a leader, but a living symbol of that transformation. Interestingly, this isn't the first time Leo XIV and Tegel have worked together on crucial church matters. Years before this announcement, they collaborated during various synods on family, youth, and evangelization. They shared a vision, a church less obsessed with control and more focused on presence, being present to the poor, the forgotten, the confused, the disconnected. That shared vision is now being formalized. And it's stirring not only celebration but also speculation. Some Vatican commentators are now wondering, is this the beginning of a new era of papal diplomacy? A church that acts more like a global network of shepherds rather than a Roman empire of rules? Tegel's history certainly supports that view. His work in Caritas Internationalis proved his global sensibilities. He traveled to war-torn areas, worked closely with refugees, and repeatedly emphasized that the Church's first job is to listen. In fact, one of his most famous lines is, "Before we teach, we must learn, and before we speak, we must listen." It's easy to see why Pope Leo XIV resonates so deeply with this philosophy. His own papacy has been marked by a deep desire to amplify the unheard voices, not just from the peripheries of the world, but also from within the Church, the youth, the women, the lay leaders, the poor. Now, with Tegel as his closest collaborator, the Pope is poised to take this vision even further. And yet, despite the hope, not everyone is rejoicing. Behind closed doors, there's murmuring among certain Vatican factions. Some older cardinals are said to be frustrated, feeling bypassed or ignored in the decision-making process. They argue that Pope Leo XIV is leaning too heavily into symbolism and emotional leadership rather than theological clarity. One cardinal reportedly said, "We're not running a global charity, we're guarding a sacred deposit of faith." This divide highlights the real tension gripping the Vatican today. It's not just about leadership, it's about identity. Is the Church primarily a bastion of unchanging truth? Or is it a living, breathing body meant to adapt and respond to the needs of the present moment? Pope Leo XIV seems to believe that it can be both. But walking that line is incredibly hard. And that's why his decision to elevate Tegel is so powerful and controversial. Now, let's turn to the global Catholic community, because what's happening on the ground tells us even more than what's happening in the Vatican halls. Across Africa, bishops are seeing this as validation. One archbishop in Kenya said, "When I look at Cardinal Tegel, I see a future where no region is left behind. The gospel is not European. It is universal." In Latin America, where liberation theology once stirred fierce debates, many priests and lay leaders are encouraged. They see this move as a continuation of Pope Francis's dream, a church that prioritizes the poor and isn't afraid to get its hands dirty. Even in North America, where Catholicism is deeply divided, this decision has sparked new conversations. Some dioceses are already planning forums and workshops on synodality inspired by Tegel's approach. Youth ministers are talking about how to make church more participatory, and seminarians are starting to ask how leadership can be redefined. The momentum is real. But perhaps the most important response comes from ordinary Catholics, the ones who don't read Vatican news but who feel the pulse of their parishes. The ones who have been disillusioned, hurt, or confused by the Church. Many of them are watching this moment with cautious hope. They're asking, could this be the beginning of something different? Something better? In many ways, that's the real question Pope Leo XIV is asking too. He knows he can't fix everything. He knows the Church is wounded from abuse scandals, declining attendance, internal divisions. But through this decision, he's trying to plant a seed of healing, of reform, of hope. And if Cardinal Tegel represents that seed, then the entire Catholic world is watching to see if it will grow. And just when the pressure seemed too much, Pope Leo XIV surprised everyone by pausing his schedule and heading to a small chapel near Florence unannounced and without cameras. Locals who were there reported that he sat in silence for nearly an hour, praying alone without any cardinals or staff. When he finally spoke, it wasn't a grand speech. It was a whisper of gratitude. He thanked the local parish priest and the few worshippers gathered there. This moment, though not planned, showed the very essence of his papacy. Simple, honest, and deeply spiritual. This humility has been reflected in his decisions too. Most recently, Pope Leo announced that the Vatican will divert millions of euros, originally intended for ceremonial upgrades, toward building housing for refugees and expanding food programs in Eastern Europe and Sub-Saharan Africa, he stated clearly that a church that builds golden ceilings while families sleep under the sky is not the Church of Christ. That line shook the world. It was quoted in newspapers, shared across social media, and sparked intense debate in Vatican corridors. But to Pope Leo, the choice was simple. His travels across Italy haven't just been for show. He's used each stop to meet those often ignored. In Naples, he met with recovering addicts. In Venice, he listened to women who had escaped trafficking. In Sicily, he sat with the children of fishermen, many of whom lost their parents to the sea. Each visit wasn't about photos, it was about presence. Being there, hearing their pain, offering hope with his very presence. The Pope's summer plans also include an unexpected turn. He will spend a full week in silence at a remote Benedictine monastery. No media, no visitors. Just prayer, reflection, and silence. Many in the Vatican questioned this, suggesting it was unwise to disappear when the Church faces such global challenges. But Pope Leo insisted that leadership requires stillness as much as action. He believes that unless the shepherd listens in silence, he cannot hear the true cries of the flock. And yes, his sense of humor hasn't faded. In one of the lighter moments during a community lunch with farmers in Tuscany, he picked up a hoe and jokingly asked, "How do you think I'd do as a gardener?" When someone responded that he was already planting seeds of faith, he laughed and gave the man his ring, saying, "You've just preached a better sermon than I did last Sunday." His connection with youth is also growing. A recent Vatican initiative titled Light of the Future was launched under his direction. It's a global online platform where young Catholics can share projects, environmental actions, or ideas to serve their communities. Pope Leo himself logs on once a week to read messages and occasionally replies with handwritten letters. Teenagers from the Philippines, Kenya, Poland, and Colombia have all received personal notes from him, thanking them for living their faith in real ways. And it's not just Catholics watching him. Leaders from other religions have praised his openness and kindness. A Muslim imam in Milan shared how Pope Leo visited his sick wife in a hospital, unannounced, just to offer a prayer. A Jewish rabbi in Rome shared how the Pope joined a menorah lighting during Hanukkah and called it a moment of shared light in a world of shadows. All these stories paint the picture of a Pope who is not performing a role, but living a mission. And in doing so, he's reminding the world that the Church is not a museum for saints, but a hospital for the wounded. Whether it's a refugee on the border, a child in a hospital bed, a prisoner behind bars, or a lonely elder in a nursing home, Pope Leo XIV wants the Church to show up. He's faced criticism. Some say he's moving too fast. Others say he's not traditional enough. Some cardinals worry he's shaking up too much, but he doesn't seem to care about the noise. As he said in his latest homily, the voice of love is often a whisper, but it changes the world. So as summer rolls on, and the world turns its attention to vacations, headlines, and politics, Pope Leo XIV walks a different path. A path of service, a path of surprise, a path of deep, transforming faith. And maybe that's why the world is watching. Maybe that's why even those who don't go to church are paying attention. Because in a time full of noise, fear, and division, here is a man quietly, steadily, reminding us all of something very old and very true. Love still speaks. And sometimes it wears white and walks among us.